Lost in Random is the latest EA Originals game to release and comes to us from developer Zoink. As our resident deck-building genre fanatic, I was interested in how the game showcased how you would build a deck of cards to help turn the tide of battle in your favor. Mixing this mechanic into a third-person action and not actually platformer was a fresh take that had me excited. In practice, though, I found things to fall a bit flat. Please allow me to explain why. This is a tale of a world where evil has seemingly won. The story centers around two sisters, even and odd. At the 12th birthday for children, the malevolent queen comes to visit and rolls her die. Depending on where it lands, the child is taken and forced to live in one of 6 separate cities. Your sister believes she's rolled a 1, and you're happy, as it means she gets to stay home. Suddenly, the dice flips over to 6, and she is taken away by the queen. Your journey to find her takes you across varied landscapes as you meet a wide variety of interesting characters. Thankfully, the story of this game carried me through, as it is well written and features superb voice acting. I enjoyed the interplay between my character and Dicey, the magically powered and forbidden dice that I befriended early on. In this land, rolling a die leads one to the dice dimension, in which time stops. This is the period in time where you can choose the cards you want to play, and it's a great mechanic. Graphically, things are a quirky, Tim Burton-esque type of look. There's exaggerated features and odd, anthropomorphized objects everywhere. The environments have a good variety to them, and the world feels lived in. Things can be a bit sparse NPC-wise at times, but as you progress through the fancier areas of the world, the tonal shift is noticeable and welcome. Animations vary between great and occasionally stiff as a board. I'd say they definitely trend to the former far more often than the latter. It is a beautiful game, in a world I loved being a part of. Not everything is great though. My main issue is not the card system, but the actual combat and complete lack of any real platforming. Everything you do in this game, at least on controller, feels a bit off. Player movement is slow. Aiming with any ranged weapon has far too much acceleration, and swinging melee weapons has an annoying amount of input lag. Let us start with just how combat works. At the start of the game, you play a segment where you're fully powered up and ready to kick some butt. This is a nice primer for how combat will eventually work. You use your ranged attack to knock crystals off of foes. These crystals fill up a meter, which hands you up to 5 cards from your up to 15 card deck. Once you have a full hand, you then roll your die and get a number between 1 and eventually 6. This number dictates how much energy you have to play the cards in your deck, with each having a power cost of their own. Cards range from attacks to defense, hazards, healing, and cheats. It's a fun system, and building a deck became the second biggest draw of the game for me, the first being the story. You can either earn cards through quests or story progression, or you can buy them from a sentient wardrobe with an in-game currency you earn from quests or from finding in the environment. As far as actual gameplay goes, this was my favorite part of Lost in Random by far. My main issue is just how slow the melee is. I eventually got used to how ranged aiming works, but any melee weapon felt terrible to use. And it wasn't until later parts of the game where I could have an incredibly overpowered combination that I ever got through a fight in what felt like less than 10 minutes. Things drag on, and I eventually began to dread combat from roughly an hour in until the 8 or 9 hour mark when I was far more powerful. There is a dodge which is key to everything, as you will quickly die if you're hit too often. A generous window is provided for the dodge where it will turn into a teleport. That teleport can be buffed up by specific card usage. If the melee felt faster and more responsive, and the range felt just a bit tighter, I think the system would be great. As is, I found it completely wanting for the majority of my playtime. The other main issue is there's no platforming in the game. In any previews or any other coverage you've seen of the game, you might think there is, but there's none of it. It simply does not have any. You press buttons to use ladders, you cannot jump, and while there is a sprint button, it's not really used in puzzles. It's disappointing, and it seems like such an auto mission. The only real gameplay here is combat. Thankfully, the story kept my attention the entire way through. It's not brilliant or unique, but it's clever, and it's set in a world I really grew to enjoy. It has a good mix of humor and seriousness that can be tough to pull off. Quite often the humor part is where games fail, but this one got quite a few smiles out of me. Sound-wise, things are excellent in all respects except one. The main protagonist does not talk the majority of the time you're choosing dialogue options. I wonder if it was a choice of not having players sit through them speaking out every line, but it was a bit jarring when my character would talk constantly in cutscenes or when I was just walking around the game world, but then clam up completely despite having long and varied conversations with full-on dialogue options for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Polish-wise, I had no real bugs, and only a few instances of graphical pop-in. Things ran well, and the overall image quality was excellent on my Xbox Series X. In conclusion, this is a game that came close to greatness for me, but in the end, the combat held it back. I still enjoyed my time with it quite a bit thanks to the story and the world building, and I am very interested to see what developer Zoink is working on next. As this is only $30 at launch, I think it's well worth taking a chance on if what you've seen here sounds interesting to you. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help. If you do subscribe, you can tick that little bell to know whenever we post. And we'll see you here next time on XboxEra.